Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play On podcast. I've Luke here with me again, and this is the football edition. And we're going to start today by looking at the matches which happened in the Ulster Championship. First, the game between Donegal and Derry, which, in my opinion, no doubt was the game of the weekend. Luke, we predicted that Donegal would get a right scare, and they really did. Derry really, gave them a right good game, and Donegal, just about get through with a McBurty screamer.
Yep, this was finally we kind of got the game, the championship so far. Like it'd been kind of slow enough start to the championship where teams had kind of they've been playing teams they've been expecting to beat, and we haven't really seen a shock yet as well. And then I suppose like we said on the podcast last week, this was kind of the first game where it was a team kind of coming into red hot form that could maybe challenge the Division 1 side. And look, that's exactly what we got. And ultimately, yeah, you've talked about the McBurty score. It just showed Donegal that bit more experience, that bit more nous, that in the last minute they got the ball to their shooter, and from an outrageous distance out, he absolutely nailed it. So that was, I thought, the big difference kind of was that last minute when you see Donegal freeing up space for McBurty to kick a score, whereas Derry spent about 30 seconds up the far end, kind of playing it back and forward, looking for a shooter, and they couldn't get McGuigan in any space whatsoever. And ultimately, David Coldrick just had to blow it up because they were taking way too long and nobody would take the shot on. So, yeah, it was, I thought, really professional second half by Donegal, and this game's going to really stand for them.
Yeah, definitely. And while you're on the subject of that, the last minute there where Derry were kind of moving the ball around, trying to get a shot at the posts, that is when the referee, unfairly, in my opinion, is left in a situation where he's screwing one of the teams over regardless of what he does. If he blows Derry up, Derry are like, well, we're on the attack, why are you blowing the game up? That type of narrative comes in that, he shouldn't have blown it up. He should have let the attack go. He should have let someone have a shot at the posts. But then if he lets Derry have a shot at the posts, Donegal will look at it and say, you played 2 minutes over to let them have a shot at the posts. Why did you do that? And I think it still baffles me to this day that we still leave the time keeping up to the referee. I look at the women's Gaelic football and how they have the clock counting down, and it's out of the referee's hands, and you just focus on refereeing the game. And the clock is undisputed. No one will ever have a problem with the clock. You ran out of time. That's just how it is. The robot decides. And yeah, like why are we leaving human error as a possibility here? Why don't we just have a countdown? Because then Derry there in that last play, they would have known, look, we have 30 seconds, 40 seconds. We have to move this ball quickly and someone has to take the shot on. They were patient because they thought maybe David Coldrick will let us play this attack out no matter how long it takes us. And they were wrong about that. But if the countdown clock was there, Derry would have had to force the shot and maybe they would have got an equaliser.
Yeah, I thought David Coldrick got it absolutely spot on. Like, you can nearly even say the other way that personally felt that maybe could have been blown up 20 seconds earlier, because there was two opportunities certainly for Derry to take a shot on. They would have been very low kind of percentage shots, but they did have chances for shots, and they would have been similar kind of difficulty to the McBurty score. So look, I think that would be the frustrating part for Derry, is that they didn't take the shot on at the end and they didn't have a go. If it goes wide, it goes wide. But they're nearly kind of this sense that they're left wondering, could they have scored from there? And that has to be the disappointment. But I think you make a good point about the shot clock. It does seem like it's all kind of subjective for referees, kind of on how many additional time, like how many subs was there, how long were fellas down and stuff as well. And it's another thing a referee has to add to, that they have to think to. Yeah, I don't know. The shot clock. The shot clock would be an interesting one. I think a lot of people are kind of fed up with additional rules kind of being brought in at the same time too. But look, personally, I thought that David Coldrick got spot on, and I don't think Derry can have any complaints about not being able to finish that attack, because let's be honest, it wasn't really attack. It was just they were playing it back and forward across the edge of the 45, and they weren't going anywhere. So I thought it was spot on.
Yeah, and as well as that, Derry missed so many chances throughout the game. Like the amount of goal chances that they missed. In particular, the one that stands out to me is Benny Heron. He hit the crossbar with, what would 100% be goal on his mind. Porrick Cassidy got a hand pass inside by a Derry attack. He hand passed it across the goal, got Patton out of the way. Benny Heron's there running in, open goal pretty much, and he hits the crossbar with a palmed effort, and it comes down onto the goal line. There are the margins, and at that stage, Derry were ahead by a point. That was early second half. If Benny Heron scores that goal, that would give a turbo boost to Derry, and we could be talking about a Derry victory here, because as well as that, there was the penalty incident. Shane McGuigan, that definitely looked like a penalty, and it wasn't given. Just big moments that seem to go against Derry. When you are the underdog, you need a bit of luck. And I thought they got everything right. McBrearty was quietened by Chrissy McKay throughout the entire game, pretty much until his game winner. Conor Glass was exceptional in midfield. So was Emmett Bradley. Both of them got on the score sheet. Kieran McFall was immense. He scored 3 points. And yet still, they screwed themselves over by missing those big, big chances, because, Donegal were there for the taking and Derry just didn't take them.
Yeah, going back to the penalty for a second, I probably disagree with most of the kind of commentary on it, and that I thought the referee got it right. There was contact there, but in that situation, that McGuigan had an opportunity to lay off a hand pass for a simple batted ball into the back of the net, and then he decided to just run straight at the defender, in my opinion. And I just felt like he was looking for that. He was looking for the penalty completely. And there probably was a bit of contact, but I completely understand in real time why it wasn't given, because my first instinct when I saw it was that he was just ran directly at McMenamin and was just looking for a penalty. So I completely understand why it wasn't given. And but yeah, moving on to the other points you're saying there, that the job that McKay did and McBrearty was just exceptional, and it was probably one of the best jobs I've seen in McBrearty as well. And he's just proved himself to be one of the best defenders that there is, kind of, as well. Another name I feel like to mention for Derry is Garrett McKinless coming forward from centre half back, and he was a constant threat driving forward. And those kind of forward runs that he had the entire game were causing Donegal huge problems, and he kicked an exceptional score. So look, there were so many positives from Derry, but ultimately Donegal, I suppose, we're going to get into a bit more here now. They were ultimately just more streetwise in the second half, and they looked that just bit kind of further ahead than Derry, kind of when they came to the crunch.
Yeah, and they're, big players kind of stood up for them at big moments. Like McBrearty quiet, and Donegal needed other people to step up and get the scores, and they got a load of very, very nice points from the likes of Michael Langan and Niall O'Donnell in particular. They were huge for Donegal to win this game. And yeah, now that they've got that, obviously Michael Murphy came off the bench. They kind of give off an impression to me like they're putting plasters over axe wounds. They're very open at the back. Michael Murphy as well, where's his fitness at? McBrearty can be quiet like that. I know he stood up big at the end. Now they're going in against Tyrone, and it's interesting. We'll get on to Tyrone in a second, but Tyrone as well are very much in transition, very much kind of top-heavy team as well. That is setting up to be a cracker now.
Yeah, completely. I think you make a good point about kind of that Donegal kind of plaster over cracks. Like you're looking at still, they do not have a centre half back, and that they're moving fellas around the whole time to try and fill that hole. And look, that's a definite concern. You look at the backs as well. Owen McHugh's doing a job in there as well. He's no way is that he a natural kind of player in there as well. So there's certainly questions about it. And you're kind of looking at it as well. Like Ryan McHugh and Owen Baum Gallagher are very attacking players too. And it's the defence, just there isn't really much of a balance there. And that would be a concern against the Tyrone team that looked pretty free scoring at the weekend. But the positives, plenty positives as well. Though. I thought the two fellas in midfield, Hugh McFadden and Quaylen McGonigal, were exceptional. And I thought that they completely controlled the game. And that's a huge boost kind of going into it as well. Plus, the other thing as well to note is the impact Oran McNeilish had when he came on. He played the last 25 minutes, and I thought he completely controlled the tempo when he came on. I suppose Murphy kind of grabbed the headlines when he came on, and stuff like that, and the scoreline changed. But him and McNeilish came on pretty much at the same time, and I thought McNeilish even had a bigger kind of impact on the game, really, and I'd fully expect him to be starting in around centre half forward the next day out.
Yeah, definitely. He is one of Donegal's best players. He's not even a starter. He's one of the key men. And he was a big loss when he stepped away from the panel for a couple of years. And having him back this year is it's a real ace up their sleeve, because he's kind of under the radar a little bit in terms of the quality that he has. You're right there saying, when Murphy came on, there was no way McNeilish was going to get the headlines. And Derry were obviously focused on Murphy coming on, not as much focus on McNeilish coming on. And I think that might have helped him to control the game as much as he did. As for Derry, like a wonderful, wonderful year. Like, they win Division 3 untouched in that division. They hammered absolutely everyone in their way. And, for really, I know Rory Gallagher had last year, but this is the first year where he's been able to really put down the stamp on this team. And he's been outstanding with them. And the football that they're playing, the midfield partnership of Glass and Bradley, the forwards that they've developed, McFall, McGuigan, at the back of, as you mentioned, Garrett McKinless and Chrissy McKay, Brendan Rodgers. He's developed a really, really solid team in such a short space of time. And you wonder now, the likes of other players that went abroad, the likes of Callum Brown now, who've gone over to the AFL, will he be able to coax them back as well? Because he seems to be really building something. Conor Glass's interview was very, very interesting, because Conor Glass was saying that Division 3 was the furthest thing away from, in their minds. They weren't thinking about Division 3. They were thinking about much, much bigger things. And when you see how much they put it up to Donegal, who a lot of people would see as an All-Ireland contender, only 1 year into the project, it just begs the question, how far can Gallagher and Derry go? Because, to make it this far in such a short space of time, how much further can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this game's going to stand to them. Like, there's so much they can take from this game. Their kind of inexperience maybe showed a little bit at the end, but look, they will learn from this. And look, this is just it kind of further illustrates the problem, I think, that so many have with the structure of the championship this year, is that Derry their reward for a fantastic performance against the top Division 1 side is that they're done for the year now. Like, this team would be hugely confident of having a great run in the qualifiers if they were in place this year, and then once again kind of potentially getting to an All-Ireland quarter-final and semi-final, which would sum up kind of where they're at as a team. But instead, they're one and done, and then they just have to wait until January next year to get back into the league, kind of, and then try and build momentum again. So it must be really frustrating for them that when they feel like that they're really going somewhere, that now, no, this is just that's that, and that the season's done for them. So, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating, I think, from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, definitely, because they were emerging as a real story of the year, and now it's all finished. But for Donegal, it's definitely a very good win, and now they'll go on to play against Tyrone. And speaking of Tyrone, they beat Cavan by 1 goal and 18 points to 13 points. The fairy tale of Cavan is officially over for the time being, at least. The second half in this game was pitiful, to be honest. Tyrone just put them away. It was a very even start to the game. It ended up 7 points apiece after 25 minutes. And yeah, like, Cavan were kind of hanging in there. Garrod McKiernan kicked a couple of points in a row to level them up at the start as well. And, it was going back and forth. Then Tyrone kind of got a few points ahead coming up to halftime. And then the goal straight after halftime by Brian Kennedy just was the signal that, there was a parting in the ways now. Tyrone were going on and Cavan were going out. And then from that point on, it was very lackluster. You'd argue that the goal should have been stopped. Martin Riley managed to get back onto the line, and he just didn't seem to be able to keep it out, but it looked like he should have been able to. It was a very weak shot by Kennedy, but it ended up in the back of the net. And yeah, for Tyrone, it's difficult to know just where they're at. The one thing that we do know for sure is that Darren McCurry is on fire, and that Cathal McShane came off the bench and kicked 3 points, which is absolutely massive for them.
Yeah, look, it's a good point to make, because we're looking at Cavan this year, relegated to Division 4, an absolute disastrous kind of year. And yeah, like normally you'd look at this scoreline 118-13 and you think really impressive from Tyrone and that they really look to be kind of on top form, but it's just kind of hard to read into it because Cavan kind of there's something just not right with Cavan this year, and yeah, look, there's probably still a lot of questions after as well. Like you talked about, kind of after the goal from Brian Kennedy, kind of well, it was kind of nearly walked in, that goal as well, which was, it was just a really, it was a weird one really. But then after that, Cavan just kind of went long ball into Thomas Galligan for the entire kind of for the entire kind of second half really, and they had absolutely no joy whatsoever. So yeah, it was they just went really predictable, and it was a pitiful second half really, and yeah, plenty of space for the likes of McCurry and McShane at the end to just pick off scores, and yeah, McCurry is gave an exhibition, kind of 6 points from play. So it's yeah, hard to know really what to make of it really, but yeah, a win's a win for Tyrone, and I'll be delighted that McShane got plenty of game time back into him.
One thing that would definitely worry me from Tyrone's point of view going into the Donegal game, though, is the players that they'll be missing. Obviously, Conor McKenna is out injured. Dara Canavan is out injured. And right at the end, coming towards the end of the game, one of the stupidest red cards I've ever seen, Ronan McNamee. I don't know what he's doing. Kieran Brady's just there. Maybe there's a little bit of, verbals going on, but there's absolutely no need to put your hand into his face. Everyone's saying, Tomas O'Shea was there, like, that's not enough for a red card. It doesn't matter. There's absolutely no need for Ronan McNamee to put his hand into Brady's face. The second he does that, he's given the referee a decision to make. And if I was Brian Dooher, I'd be disgusted with Ronan McNamee because it shows such a lack of discipline. Like, you're so far ahead. The game is over. Maybe this little Cavan fella says something to you, that you don't like. You just ignore it and you just beat him by more. There's no need to put your hand in his face at exactly what he wanted you to do. And now McNamee, if he's suspended now obviously they're going to try and appeal it, but if he's suspended for the Donegal game, that's a massive blow to a defence that already looked a bit vulnerable, especially when Kerry hit 6 goals past it.
Yep, completely. And look, if you look at it, kind of, McNamee would have been the man to pick up McBurty as well, is the key thing to think about there. We don't know who's going to come back into that full back line now to replace. Like, I know Tiernan McCallum's gone off the bench, but maybe he kind of comes in and they kind of work around the team a bit more and stuff. But yeah, look, McNamee would have been the guy to pick up McBurty. Maybe they'll put Hampsey on him now instead, but it's yeah, that's a huge loss because McNamee is probably their best defender, and they're coming up against a Donegal forward line that, like, there's kind of superstar potential on that forward line. If Murphy's fit, like, it's another player that they have to kind of worry about who's picking him up. So they've lost their best man marker against a forward line that requires, like, some considerably good man markers as well. So they'll be absolutely pulling their hair out about that. And yeah, then the other end, kind of like we've already talked kind of about the absence of McKenna and Canavan, and yeah, look, they're huge losses. So it's kind of it's setting it up kind of nicely for next week because both teams are kind of have a lot of questions about injuries, suspensions, who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing, and it definitely won't be the two strongest 15s out. But yeah, it's just whichever team can kind of work it out the most, I suppose.
Yeah, for me, it's no question that Colin McShane has to start this next game for Tyrone now. I think he showed enough that he's back to full fitness, and whatever way that Tyrone do it, he'll be a curveball for Donegal. The second that he comes in, Donegal will have to have someone picked out to mark him. I feel like Neil McGee will just go straight on to him, or maybe Stephen McMenamin. But the second McShane comes on, he changes the game because now Tyrone have an option to go long into him as well. And I don't think that they should waste that card.
Yeah, completely. I think you're going to see that. I think McGee is going to pick up McShane, and I think that McMenamin will probably pick up McCurry. And yeah, so it'll be an interesting one. But then that kind of leaves Matty Donnelly be free up there as well. And yeah, and Richard Donnelly as well will be around too. So it's look, there's still like plenty of kind of scoring potential. Now, Tyrone forward line, and that you just know that that's going to leave the space. Sludden and Conor Myler are exceptional what they do with the work rate that they're going to have getting back and stuff as well, helping out that defence. So it's a nice kind of balance in that forward line for Tyrone. But yeah, again, kind of in not kind of non-traditional way for two Ulster sides. I suppose the biggest questions I think for both teams will be their defence going into it, and that's where I think the biggest concerns are. So it's you kind of saw a little bit of a lesson learned from Tyrone from the league, that they weren't it was much less of a swashbuckling style that Kerry kind of absolutely tore apart in the league, and they were dropping fellas a bit back more, but they were at all times, there were 4 forwards being kept in the forward line by Tyrone. So it's look, I do think that's the thing, and whichever team kind of performs the best defensively is who I think is going to come out on top ultimately. And look, it's really, really hard to call, especially when we don't know what sort of teams each are going to have out.
Yeah, definitely. Conor Kilpatrick, he made his championship start for Tyrone. Massive day for him. He looked pretty good in midfield. He was another find during the league. Kieran McGeary and Conor Myler as well, they go underrated because of the amount of work that they do for Tyrone. And then, of course, they had Paul Donaghy in a corner forward and Matty Donnelly starting full forward. So it's very hard to know what kind of wavelength Brian Dooher and Virgil Logan are on. There seems to be new players on the pitch every single week for Tyrone, whereas Donegal, it's a lot more settled. And for that reason, I feel like Donegal have to be favourites.
Yeah, look, it's a really difficult one, I find that. Like, you look as well, kind of Jamie Brennan limps off for Donegal as well, and it's like, so there are questions on his fitness. Murphy's like clearly not 100%, and I find it really, really difficult to call. And look, I think it's gonna be another one of these games where there'll be maybe 1 point in it, and it could be another situation when somebody steps up and kicks an unbelievable score that they weren't expected to. And Joe, I'm probably leaning more to Tyrone now as it goes on, and that I think Tyrone might edge it by a point, and that I'm kind of a little bit concerned about Donegal kind of defensively, and I think that I think you look kind of those Tyrone forwards, and look, they absolutely have the potential to cause havoc there.
Yeah, the Tyrone forwards, obviously McCurry will be a marked man, but Paul Donaghy as well, capable of kicking points over for fun. Matty Donnelly as well, and McShane's influence will change the game. I understand why you're going for Tyrone, but me personally, I'm going for Donegal. I think McBrearty now will be red hot confidence-wise after that point. I don't think Tyrone really have anyone now that Ronan McNamee has gone that will be able to take him out of the game the way that Chrissy McKay did. I do think they will put Hampsey on him, but McBrearty's he's on too good form, as well as that McNeilish now will be starting the game, and if Michael Murphy starts, I think that's the game changer.
Yeah, look, there's some potentially huge matchups kind of here, and look, that's the thing is, like, if Murphy does start, that's the thing is that I've no idea who Tyrone even go with to pick him up, because like there doesn't seem to be a kind of natural man marker for him. So it's that is the big concern, I think. And if Murphy has any sort of fitness, then that could be a huge problem for Tyrone.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so moving on from the Ulster Championship, now we're going to go to the Munster Championship, where again we had 2 games, and now the Munster Final is official. Kerry will play Cork in the Munster Final of 2021. They get a chance to avenge their loss of last year, which was one of the shocks of the championship, and indeed one of the biggest shocks I've ever seen. Cork, beat Limerick quite handy. Kerry will start with their game. They dethroned the Munster champions Tipperary by 119 to 1-8. Just a very, very good performance by Kerry. Tipperary dropped a lot of bodies back, and Kerry still racked up 119. The standout score was David Clifford's goal. That was just an absolute bullet into the back of the net, created by Gavin White's direct running. And Kerry kind of showed that off a bit. They have a lot of strong, powerful runners, the likes of Sean O'Shea, Paddy Clifford in particular. He's become a real link man now for Kerry in attack. And simply put, they were just too strong for Tipperary.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was Yeah, it was predictable the whole way through, kind of, and that the game is kind of only going one way from the start, really. And yeah, look, we saw that the Clifford goal where he took the net off the back of the goal as well was it was definitely the standout moment for it as well. I think though Kerry they were more than happy to push fellas up. Like you look, Tom O'Sullivan was pretty much playing as an additional forward for the entire game off from cornerback. He kicked 2 points in a row where there were two really good scores as well. So yeah, look, it's plenty of positives from Kerry. Like they didn't even require kind of Clifford. He was able to go off after about 50 minutes as well. So they're motoring kind of well. They're dispatching every team that they are coming up against, and yeah, comfortable start from them so far. So they'll be delighted with how it goes. And as well, yeah, look, the fellas coming in off the bench are adding further competition in as well. Killing Spillane seems to kick 3 points off the bench every single game. So loads of competition at forward line, and yeah, things looking good for them.
Yeah, definitely, and they're motoring along nicely. I think there's no doubt in my mind they will exact revenge for last year by beating Cork in the Munster Final. I think there's no doubt the Kerry will end up Munster champions. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's we're going to see summer football now. We remember last year in Porky Queeve where they played in Monsoon and they got dragged into a dogfight. And look, it's not going to happen this year. And Kerry are going to win this one. And I think they're going to put a message down and they're going to be Cork comfortably this year.
Yeah, definitely. The way they just shut Tipperary out as well. It took Tipperary 20 minutes to get their first point from play. That was from Kevin Fahey. And yeah, Kerry's kick-out press as well is definitely something that interests me. This press definitely has broke goalkeepers in the past. Definitely the standout one for me was in the league on Niall Morgan. They got so much joy off that. So the Kerry press, it definitely has broken goalkeepers. It definitely, put the pressure right up on Evan Comerford. And now they're going in against Micheál Martin or potentially Mark White, depending on how the Cork management go. Certainly Tomás O'Shea feels like they should go with Mark White because of his ability to boom a kick out over the midfield. Micheál Martin is a very, good goalkeeper. He's a brilliant shot stopper. But, his performance against Kerry will be huge because Kerry always come with this kick out press. They press right up. They leave no space. And, yeah, Micheál Martin's performance would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that is the way kind of the top teams, how they kind of smother the life out of teams, is that with the press and that they just don't allow teams to get out at all. And it's so tiring that when a team is trying to work their way out from there and that you're constantly facing contested kickouts the whole time. And yeah, look, this has been a huge thing for Kerry so far. And yeah, I think that I think I can only really see one winner. They just look so focused this year. The structure looks a whole lot better kind of as well. Defensively, they do look better. They have shipped kind of 2 penalties so far this year, but yeah, no goals conceded from open play. And yeah, I just think they look a different animal this year. So yeah, I like, with all respect to Cork, I just only see one winner here.
Yeah, definitely. And, with Kerry, there's always going to be the question of, they're going to play against Dublin eventually. If their championship goes according to plan. To win the All-Ireland for Kerry, they'll have to go through Dublin. And, their kick-out press, they're kind of mastering the kick-out press now. The first time I remember it jumping out was under Eamon Fitzmaurice, when Stephen Cluxton had his 5-minute meltdown in the All-Ireland Semi Final in 2016. Since then, they've been perfecting the press. They've lines of 4 out in the middle that just give the keeper absolutely nowhere to kick it, and the forwards push right up. And then they've got the likes of Paddy Clifford, Stephen O'Brien to run the ball in closer to goal, and then they get it to the shooters and they punish the mistake. Obviously we've talked about how Stephen Cluxton has asked for some time away from the Dublin team this year. Now, presuming that Kerry play against Dublin in the All-Ireland final, if Cluxton isn't there, do Kerry have a much better chance at cracking Evan Comerford's kick out?
Yeah, look, the Comerford, to be fair, has had an excellent kick out. He's learned from the best there is in the business, and look, kind of Comerford in his own right is a top keeper with a really good kick out. But I think it's just how effective the Kerry kind of press is. Like, you look at the other Evan Comerford from Tip, like, is renowned for his kickouts as well, and he faced serious problems with it as well. So I just think the Kerry they've clearly spent an awful lot of time working on this, and it's just become really, really effective now. And this is kind of what it takes to get to the next stage. Like, you look kind of Dublin winning the 6 in a row, kind of a huge basis for that was how effective they were on the kick-out press. I think Kerry have copped this now, and that they have developed a system which is just so hard to deal with, and it gives them a great chance of kind of dispatching teams that they would that they'd feel like that they're superior to. So yeah, that's probably the way I view it.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that Kerry are getting good at as well is trolling. I think if you look at Michael Quinlivan's red card, he was just baited so much by Gavin Crowley. Gavin Crowley obviously, gave him a little bit of verbals. And then to see Quinlivan's reaction, he didn't really even hit him that hard, but he still, still a red card offence. He still went to hit Gavin Crowley. But Quinlivan just bit on the bait. And yeah, Kerry are developing that now. They're getting a bit mouthy. And you wonder as well, later on in the year, we've seen the rivalry with Dublin. We saw at the end of the league match in 2020, the scuffles at the end of the game. I think it's going to kick off again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, they want to make sure now, Kerry, that they won't be walked over by anyone. And look, it's another important kind of thing that a team has to develop is if they want to be one of the best. They, like, maybe it's not pretty at times, but it's required. Like, and they just seemed that bit more streetwise this year. And look, you're kind of looking at it, and I just can't see any way that Cork kind of gives them a serious scare in the Munster final.
Yeah, definitely. I think Kerry, are nailed on to win this. One crack in the armour for Kerry, though, could be, if they're ran at directly. Cork have very, very strong direct runners. Ian Maguire, Rory Dean in particular, that's his forte. And if you look at the Tipperary goal that came from the penalty, it is literally just Jack Kennedy running right through the heart of the Kerry defence, and then they're forced to bring him down. And, Cork, with the runners that they have, you remember the Munster Final a couple of years ago where they got 2 quick goals. They both came from Rory Dean. He hand-passed one across to Damien Cahalan to finish. I think he got one himself as well. His direct running tore Kerry apart that day, and you wonder, have they changed enough? Who's going to mark Rory Dean? Who's going to stop this direct running? Because if Cork managed to show them up again for being vulnerable to direct running, there's no doubt that the other big teams will take quick notice.
Yeah, completely. And I think that's kind of. I think you'll see Gavin Crowley pick him up, and you might see him try to do a similar job than what he did in Quinlivan. So I suppose it'll be an interesting one to watch. And I suppose moving on to Cork, that you look kind of at the weekend, and John O'Rourke kind of kicked 1-3, and Brian Hurley had a good game as well. Kind of Powter's there as well. Powter being back is a huge kind of huge boost for them, because like he adds as well to that direct running coming up from Cork. Well, named in cornerback, didn't really play there much, but he's a huge kind of weapon to run through the centre. So they do have the tools to run at Kerry with Powter, with Dean, with Connolly, with all these players, with Brian Hurley. And they got over the line against Limerick at the weekend by, it was about 8 points in the end. And it had the potential, that game, to be kind of a bit of a banana skin for them. But Cork did everything that they had to do to win. So it's a good win, and they're into a Munster final. But it remains to be seen how it goes next.
Bit of a disappointing end to the year for Limerick. I thought that, me and you both picked them to actually win this game. I was, going with, a romantic view of the championship, that the underdog could have its day. Cork, quickly put that to bed. Limerick, not the best. They got an opening point from Gordon Brown after 26 seconds, straight from the throw in. And Ian Corbett, Danny Neville kicked some nice points. Ian Corbett's point brought them back to within 4, but after that, Cork, outscored them by 5 points, 2 towards the end. That was the writing on the wall for Limerick. Good year for them. They nearly got promotion from Division 3. Billy Lee is definitely, improving their side. But the reality is that they just won't win a Munster Championship, and that's the sad thing. That's why, we'll get onto this later. I just think the championship structure has to be changed, because what can Limerick realistically win? even though they are improving so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and again, yeah, look, one and done again, no momentum whatsoever, and it's look, yeah, they're coming up against a team that have traditionally been a stronger footballing county than them, and yeah, look, they do. It would have been a shock to win this, and then the reward for that shock would have been again against Kerry in the next round as well. So, like, it's these teams aren't really set up to go far into this competition with the way it currently is. So it's yeah, look, we're gonna further talk about this, but yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, definitely. And the game that we're going to talk about that in the context of is the Mayo versus Leitrim game. Mayo winning by 5 goals and 20 points to 11 points. This is an absolute joke. This is an embarrassment to our sport that we keep persisting with these championship structures when Mayo, the population, the size, the funding, the training that they have, and Leitrim's squad turnover means they have a new team every year. It's sheep to the wolves. They just put them out to get battered, and everybody knew that Leitrim were going to get battered before the championship even began. Looking at how well Mayo were playing, it's just embarrassing. If you're a Leitrim player, what is the point? Why would you want to play and just get battered every year? You have to give them something to realistically come back for. Mayo and Galway and maybe Roscommon are going to win the Connacht Championship every single year. Everybody knows that. No Leitrim or Sligo has won it since 2007. Since 2007, that's 14 years ago. It's just embarrassing for the sport. It's even worse in Leinster. Nobody other than Dublin has won it since 2010. Like, the big teams will always win their provincial championships usually. Last year was a freak show. There was something in the air, but the norm is that the big teams will always win. And if you were a Leitrim player, why would you bother?
Yeah, look, it was kind of evident after even about 10 minutes, like 15 minutes into the game when Mayo were 8-0 up, kind of, and yeah, look, it was only ever going to go one way, and yeah, look, it was just a kind of glorified challenge game, really, in the end, and look, yeah, Leitrim don't get anything out of this, and it must be completely deflating for them that they know that no matter how well they've been training, that they just can't cope with a team kind of the quality of Mayo's kind of, and yeah, I don't know. Every time it's kind of put out there about a tier championship, that people say that the players from the kind of traditionally Division 4 counties don't want this, but like I don't see kind of how any team can enjoy going out and being beaten by that level, and maybe they're afraid that these kind of, if the equivalent of a Joe McDonagh Cup won't get the same coverage, but you look at the hurling kind of, and there's nearly an argument to be made that the Joe McDonagh Cup has kind of the quality, that the excitement levels and everything has been on par with the senior championship as well. That these teams are playing each other the whole time, and there's some really tight games. You've seen some huge shocks like Offaly being relegated down to a lower tier and stuff like that as well. And there is no way in which a lower tier championship is going to be producing kind of the same results that we're seeing right now. So I think that's like completely to be considered, and it should nearly be looking at a situation where there's a senior, intermediate, and a junior championship just for the sake of better games. And if the GA can find a way to promote these games so that these fellas aren't feeling that they're forgotten about by the national media and stuff as well, I think that has to be the way to go forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the LGFA structure as well is one that definitely, works. You've got the senior, you've got the intermediate, you've got the junior championship, as you've said. And at the end of the year, they have, the senior team of the year, the intermediate team of the year, the junior team of the year. They recognize the best players. They recognize the best players in those competitions. It's just a joke. This is the equivalent of taking a League Two side in the English Football League and making them play against Manchester City or making them play against Arsenal or Chelsea or Liverpool. Like, what do you realistically expect? How are you going to tell me that, Leitrim haven't won a Connacht Championship since 1994? How are you going to tell me that, Mayo, absolutely nobody thought that Leitrim were going to get within 10 points of Mayo. Like, so what is the motivation for a Leitrim player to think, you know what, I'm going to train hard, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to take care of myself, I'm going to get enough sleep, I'm going to, put my life on hold for this championship, just to go out and get battered. And then next year I'm going to come back and do it again. Like, you have to give the players something to come back for that they can realistically win. It's the same in Leinster. If you're Wicklow or Wexford, they're playing their first game of the season, and then the winner gets to go on and play against Dublin. Like, it's just a joke at this stage. It's, the idea that, oh, well, this is the way that it's always been. It's a romantic view. It's too idealistic. And every year there's an absolute hammering.
Yeah, look, I think that the problem is there's nearly a kind of romanticized kind of opinion held by many about the provincial championships, and that they're nearly this kind of sacred thing that can't be got rid of. But look, you're just seeing the way it's going every year, and that's like potentially, like, I know a lot of people were saying like last year's results where Tip and Cavan kind of won. That's the reason that these have to be kept. But I refuse to believe that a team will value kind of a provincial title much more than, say, winning an intermediate All Ireland or something as well. You're going to see similar scenes, similar jubilation, and look, it's just important that if this happens, like you already talked about there, the All Stars for each tier kind of coming in, and that these games are being shown on the national broadcaster and stuff as well, and that media outlets are covering them as well. So if all this happens, I think surely this is the way to go. And like you're looking this year, there's a reason why kind of the football championship has been completely overshadowed by the hurling. It's because you're looking at the hurling at the moment. There's 12 teams in the senior hurling championship, and you could arguably say that 10 of them have a chance of winning an All Ireland kind of. And yeah, Limerick are kind of like the favourites at the moment, and they're a bit ahead of everyone. But you look at teams 2 to 10, any of them could beat each other on any considerable day. And it just makes for such a better spectacle. And let's just imagine a senior championship with 12 teams in football as well. And it's a similar situation that, yeah, maybe Dublin and Kerry are a little bit ahead, but teams 3 to 12 could all beat each other as well on any day. So it'd be just a far better kind of spectacle. And then you're looking at another situation where Division 3 teams are playing Division 3 teams, and maybe a few lower Division 2 teams are battling out for that intermediate title.
Yeah, definitely. And what it also helps is, if you look on the hurling side, when Antrim came up and when Laois came up, and I presume now when Offaly come up, they're coming up as champions of what they came up from. They're coming up with confidence. They're coming up with a squad that believe that they've earned their shot at the big boys, and they're willing to, you saw Antrim against Clare, when they beat Clare in the first round of the league, the passion and the determination that they had, and the performances that, that were given that day for Antrim were absolutely fantastic. They came up with confidence because they had earned their spot at the table. Leitrim do not belong at the same level as Mayo. Just simple as, how can you argue that they do? Because however many years ago, someone drew a line on the map and said that Leitrim was here and Mayo was here. And that means that Leitrim are on the same level as Mayo. Like, the proof is in the pudding. Leitrim are a Division 4 team. They won nothing in Division 4. Mayo hammered everybody in Division 2, and they're widely considered now to be the third best team in the country. So how can you sit there and tell me that it's fair on Leitrim to play Dublin how can you tell me it's fair for Leitrim to play the likes of Mayo, Galway and Roscommon every single year with no hope, especially when they don't have the qualifiers? It's one and done. You go out, you get your ass whooped, and then you go and get ready for next year. And let's be honest, the Leitrim manager will be getting ready with about half the panel that he had at the weekend for next year.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, look, it was reflected kind of in the game at the weekend. I suppose just to touch on it briefly, some good performances from Mayo. Kind of Ryan O'Donoghue looked unplayable at times. Darren McHale again, kind of scoring 2-1, another kind of decent scoring tally. Same with Tommy Conroy, a goal and 3. But like, it's kind of hard to know if you kind of read anything into that. They're not going to face as little resistance again in the championship. So yeah, look, these fellas, like, they've looked excellent so far in the first 2 games, kind of against kind of Division 4 opposition. But yeah, it kind of remains to be seen how they'll get on against Galway in the Connacht Final kind of when they're coming up against probably will be a much more watertight Galway.
Definitely. And the key thing now for Mayo will be around the midfield. And I think Galway actually have the advantage here because, for Galway, they Paul Conroy, they Peter Cook, they have Matthew Tierney out around the midfield, all big men. Whereas Mayo, it's well documented. Diarmuid O'Connor is injured. They've lost over the summer. They've lost Shamie O'Shea, Tom Parsons. They haven't really settled on a midfield pairing. Matthew Ruan is the only one who's really nailed on there. Aidan O'Shea started centre half forward for Mayo the last day, his 150th appearance for Mayo. And, Stephen Cohen was named in midfield alongside Matthew Ruan. Now, I actually find that very interesting because Stephen Cohen definitely is a utility player for Mayo. He's played pretty much everywhere for them. How do you rate him at midfield?
Yeah, look, I thought it was kind of interesting. It was a hard one to know really kind of what was happening because Leitrim kind of dropping so many bodies back, and it was nearly hard to know who was in midfield kind of because Jordan Flynn played an awful lot in around there as well. Kind of Connor Loftus dropped around there too. So it's I'm not actually sure who they'll go with against Galway because as you know, the Galway looked so dominant in midfield against Roscommon the last day, and that would kind of be a bit of concern. And if Cohen did play midfield, that I would, I'd be a bit concerned about them being kind of cleaned out and kickouts a little bit. But I think we might see Ruan and Jordan Flynn kind of in around there the next day, just kind of try and get a bit more size into it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Jordan Flynn is a big guy. I think Aidan O'Shea will play centre half forward as well, and I think he'll kind of hang around the middle a bit more than in other games. And they'll try and establish a bit of a foothold there, and hope for a big performance from Tommy Conroy. That's going to be the game where Tommy Conroy is going to have to come good, as well as Darren McHale. That's the game where they're going to have to prove their mettle, because it's all well and good kicking 2-1 against a Division 4 side that knows before they go out against you that they're going to get battered. But it's very different now coming up against a battle-hardened Galway, no less. A Galway team that's been in the fire against Roscommon, been on a very, very mucky pitch and ground out a really tough victory. Galway have had a real championship game, if you like. Mayo have had 2 training matches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of starting to lean slightly towards Galway in this game. And I think the fitness of Shane Walsh is going to be a huge thing. We don't know his status yet. He limped off as well and stuff. I'd imagine that he will play. Whether he's 100%, we don't know. So, look, I think it's going to be one of these games. It's going to be another kind of brawl of a game. It's going to be really tight, and I'd say it's going to be about another one in typical kind of Connacht football final fashion. It might be a 12-11 win or something, and I'm just about going to go with Mayo to win, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Mayo are going to get the job done. I just think they're a little bit ahead of Galway right now. But that being said, Galway, of course, they know if the game goes into the fire, if the game goes into an absolute scrap, I think Galway will win because Galway have that leg up on Mayo in terms that they've felt, the raw heat of championship football. And of course, Mayo being without Cillian O'Connor is absolutely huge. I don't think we will truly understand the impact of him being missing until this game is done. But so that's our coverage of the football championship done, guys. And the football championship that I hope will change, so counties like Leitrim and the lower teams can realistically, put a goal up for themselves for the championship and not just hope to get out of Division 4 and then, the championship is done, before it even begins. Give them something to play for, give them something to aim for. Every player deserves a dream at the start of the championship. Every player deserves to have, a realistic dream. Everybody knows they're not going to win the provincial championship. If you're not from the big counties, realistically, the only exception I'd give is Ulster. This last year with Tipperary winning Munster, that was only because Cork, stunned Kerry. You saw this year Kerry just bet Tipperary out the gate. That would have been what would have happened in the Munster final of last year if, Cork hadn't have got them in a monsoon. But realistically, if you're not from one of the big counties in Connacht, Munster or Leinster, your chances of winning a provincial championship are next to nothing.
Yeah, completely. And look, I think it's just this weekend it summed up kind of a lot of frustrations that people have on it. And I think there's going to be serious debate particularly in the off season about kind of potential reforms coming up.
Yeah, definitely, because no one likes that. No one likes, even Mayo, it's just boring. It's so predictable that that's going to happen, and no one gets anything from it. So I think it's well over time for change. And the structure that I would prefer to go with would be the LGFA structure of the senior, intermediate, and junior championships. And yeah, so guys, that is our coverage of the football which took place last weekend. Make sure that you catch our match review of Antrim versus Laois in the hurling, and you catch our other reviews of the LGFA fixtures. Luke, thanks for coming on.
Cheers. Thanks, James.
Okay, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast, and take care.